Hey everyone, Mundo here. If you would like to support the show, please head to patreon.com/crimeandcourtusa. Yo, what's up everyone, and welcome to episode 44 of Crime and Court USA. I'm recording this on June 29th, 2022. I'm your host, Mundo Carrillo. I hope you guys are doing well. Yep, I've been gone for a while. Life happens, but I'm back, and it feels good to be back. So, before we get into the topic at hand, which is the wild and wacky week the Supreme Court has had, I should update you guys on a couple of cases that I've talked about in the past, and that is a couple of convicted sex traffickers getting sentenced this week. The first was Ghislaine Maxwell, who received a 20-year sentence for helping Jeffrey Epstein basically recruit young girls for his sexual pleasure. So she went to trial, she got convicted, she is now going to serve 20 years. R. Kelly, famous singer R. Kelly, received a 30-year sentence for running a sex trafficking ring, also involving young girls. That trial was they both were really weird. But R. Kelly's, the stuff that these victims testified that he made them do was just fucking weird, man. I mean, obviously, all of it's bad and weird, but that one was particularly bizarre. Anyhow, some big sentences for some convicted sex offenders. All right, let's talk about the Supreme Court, guys. So the Supreme Court just absolutely went ham this week. This past week, the biggest thing that the court did was it voted 6-3 to overturn Roe v. Wade, which is a 1973 ruling that found that abortion was a constitutional right, and they released this 200-page opinion on Friday, June 24th. Friday is, of course, the one day that reporters love getting big news, so I'm sure that was great. So right before the Roe opinion, they ruled that people had the right to carry guns in public. That came from a law in New York, a decade-long law that said that in order for you to carry a gun in public, that you had to get a license and prove that you were in some kind of danger or that you needed it for your defense. And the court this last week said, no, people have the right to carry guns in public. So, that was a big win for gun rights people. And then right after the Roe ruling, that's hard to say, Roe ruling. After that Roe ruling, they ruled that a former high school football coach had the right to pray on the field after games. And that case stems from a coach in Washington State who was fired by his school district for leading prayers on the field after games. The court said that the school was wrong in firing him, that he had the right to do that. You always see those memes on social media, at least I do, that says, the reason this country is going to shit is because we don't have prayer in school. Well, guess what? They done did it. You can pray in public school now, it looks like. So back to Roe. The court was actually examining a Mississippi abortion law that prohibited abortion after 15 weeks, but it took it a step further and straight up overturned Roe, saying that abortion is not protected under the Constitution, and they did turn the power back to the states. The decision did leak in May. Politico did report on it, so everyone knew it was coming, but when it finally came on Friday, I feel like it was still a big shocker. Even though we knew it was going to happen, I think the country was still shocked. Whether you were celebrating or whether you didn't like the opinion, it was big. It was a big deal. Several state governors, including New Mexico's Michelle Lujan Grisham, have said that reproductive rights will remain safe in their states, and New Mexico is, I guess, set to be a haven for Texas, who I think will have a law now that, since Roe was overturned, I think their law goes into effect that bans abortion after 15 weeks. Is it 15 weeks? I don't know. Anyways, they have an anti-abortion law on the books. It looks like that's enforceable now. So Texans, come on over, get your weed and get your abortions over here. In addition to some states, several large companies, including Apple, Tesla, and Starbucks, have said that they will pay for employees to travel for abortions. 13 states, this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, 13 states have trigger laws, these so-called trigger laws, that outlaw medically unnecessary abortions that are set to go in effect in the event that Roe v. Wade is overturned. I think I said that horribly. Basically, there are 13 states that have laws outlawing abortion that they weren't enforceable, but now since Roe is overturned, they are now enforceable. And in other big court news this week, on Wednesday, today, the 29th, Justice Stephen Breyer formally told President Joe Biden that he was going to retire in the next 24 hours. So by the time you hear this, he might already be gone. And that paves the way for the newly appointed Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson to join the fray. Breyer was one of the 3 liberal justices, and Brown Jackson will surely take his place in that regard. All right, you guys, time to get to what I think about the matter. I know I've said this several times on the show before, but it's just really disappointing to see how political the Supreme Court really is. I mean, these decisions, again, that are kind of ruling in favor of more conservative issues, it's an indication of a political agenda. And it's not just them, it's the ideological lines they're voting on, right? It's both sides, really, that the justices, the conservative justices are voting the way you would expect a conservative person to lean, and the liberals are going the way a liberal would lean. So it's political. It's straight up a political, I don't want to say organization, but you know what I mean. Branch, whatever. But I would be remiss not to mention that they did give the power to outlaw abortion back to the states. But what will happen is that some states will keep it legal while other states will outlaw it. And I think that it's only going to serve to split the country even more. And I see this really as a disappointment in how the Supreme Court kind of handled the opinion, looking at the Mississippi law and then using that to overturn Roe. I mean, this has been telegraphed for years now. I mean, obviously, this is a big conservative issue. It has been for years and years and years. Pro-life people, this has been an issue, a platform for years and years and years. So, of course, people have been jockeying and stuff like that to try to outlaw abortion. But you could see with the appointments that former President Donald Trump made, and it's just, you could tell that the goal was to get conservatives in there and to overturn Roe. And, it's just disappointing. Disappointing to see that it's just used for political gain, and that political gain ends up coming to fruition. And I know I'm kind of ripping on the conservative bloc here, but liberals would do the same thing. Like, they would just do the exact same thing. In fact, they're kind of trying to, this whole study of possibly expanding the Supreme Court to, I believe, 14 justices. Is that right? Anyway, making it larger so that they could stuff the court with more liberals. It's just, they're just jockeying back and forth, man. And as far as the abortion itself, I don't know if I like getting into this one, man. Like, it's so tricky. It's so tricky. But I will say that I respect how it's a women's rights issue. I saw a lot of women talk about how scared and how angry they were, that they weren't in command of their own bodies, that they couldn't make their own decisions. And I understand that. I completely respect that. But there are also a lot of people in the United States who are pro-life. And I can't tell them they're wrong. I respect that stance as well. That little fetus does eventually become a person. Now, I know that sometimes there are complications with pregnancy and stuff like that. But during a normal pregnancy, that baby becomes a person. And so I get the whole pro-life thing. You know what I mean? But, with that all said, let's just be good to each other, Let's disagree respectfully. Obviously, a lot of vitriol being thrown back and forth on Friday. A lot of people, again, celebrating. A lot of people not so happy. But, we don't have to let this tear us apart, man. I don't know. That's probably wishful thinking. This is a strong issue. It really is. And I don't think it's really as black and white. Obviously, people have their hardline stances on it. But I do think it's more complicated. Like I just explained. Like, yeah, I do see the women's right thing, but I also see the kind of right to life thing, or that it's a human being growing in there, no doubt. I will just say, though, that this is America, and I do believe in the freedom to make choices, even if we might not agree with those choices. But yeah, let's be nice to each other, guys. All right, that is all for this week. Please make sure to share the podcast with your friends, share it with your enemies. Please leave a rating or a review on podcast services. That helps get the podcast in front of more people. Check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/crimeandcourtusa. All right, guys, until next time, my name is Mundo, and I'm out.